Okay. Okay. So what we're talking about is the halachas of making a Shehchiyanu on mitzvahs. So let me just review for you, and please take a look at the sheet here, and it'll help. The question is, Shehchiyanu on mitzvahs, like for instance, yesterday or 2 days ago, I put on tefillin with a boy for the first time, and I was asking myself this exact question. Like I'm showing him how to make the bracha and how to put on the tzitz. He's doing a mitzvah for the very first time, and he had a big simcha. So why not make a Shehchiyanu when he does that mitzvah of tefillin, or for that matter, if somebody's a Baal Tshuva and puts on tefillin for the first time, why not make a Shehchiyanu? Similarly, if you buy a new pair of tefillin, should we make a Shehchiyanu? And this morning I was wondering. And I continue to wonder that, the minhag of the Ashkenazim is nobody makes a Shehchiyanu under the chuppah. Sfardim, so the chassan gets his new talis and puts on his talis and makes a bracha Shehchiyanu, and that he's yotzei, the Shehchiyanu of the Kedushin. We don't even do that. But I'm wondering the following, tell me what you think about this, that l'maisa, you take a tabas Kedushin, let's say it's worth $300 or 1,000 shekel or something, and you give the tabas kedushin to the kala. She, in front of Adam, makes a kinyan in it, so it's definitely a kinyan from him to her. It's definitely something beautiful. It's definitely something meaningful and special. So, is there any reason in the world why the kala should not make a Shehchiyanu right there and then? It should be part of the Seder Kedushin, that the kala should make a Shehchiyanu right under the chuppah. Did anybody ever see anybody make a Shehchiyanu under the chuppah, the kala? No.
Could it be a tova meitiv?
It could be a tova meitiv, maybe, but certainly some kind of a bracha. Either the pashtus is that if it's tov law, it's a Shehchiyanu. It's tov law and law because he's getting married. So to make a tova meitiv. Some people say even to make both, but I never saw anybody make either.
What about the factor of mitzvahs lavleinos nitnu?
What's the mitzvah? He's giving her a tabas kedushin.
No, but there's a mitzvah l'kadesh.
Maybe.
That's in the same way you could ask, why wouldn't a kohen make a Shehchiyanu when he's given chamisha slaim at the Pidyon Ben?
Could ask the same question, but I could say the kala is not. First of all, the kala is not doing the mitzvah, but of course there's a mitzvah. Maybe you're right, but of course there's a mitzvah to make kedushin. Well, let me ask you this: when your son gives your daughter-in-law an engagement ring, did she make a Shehchiyanu? Probably should. So maybe by a chasana, it has to do with the mitzvah, like tefillin. Maybe I don't have to think about it, but it's hard to understand. I'll just tell you a quick story before we begin here with the Rishonim. That we publish Svarim. It's my sideline. So it's a big deal. Like, an author works for maybe 3-4 years on a manuscript. He gives us the manuscript. We work on it for a year, the editing, the graphics, the whole thing, the printing. And then, when I present, very often when I present a new sefer to the author, and I say, here you go, and it's his sefer, here you go. We finally got to this milestone. A lot of times you could see an author is actually driven to tears of joy, like over this accomplishment, this is a sefer. But
I've heard Rabbanim say it's like having a baby when they got the sefer finished.
So they should make, right, very good. So it should be either a Shehchiyanu or a tova meitiv, right? But so I always tell the authors to make a Shehchiyanu. That's what I tell them. Make a Shehchiyanu. You have a moment of regesh. So that's what I say. But when I just tell you an interesting story, that we published the English Svarim of Rav Asher Weiss. So when we published the first one, that was a schus, he's a big gadol. David does these big gedolim all the time, but he's a big guy. So I brought it to his house, which I don't usually do, in Ramot, and to present him the sefer, and I told him I'm coming, of course. And he came outside and he had the sefer and he was mod mitragesh with the sefer. It's a very beautiful sefer. on Emunah B'tachon as it was. And I was waiting to see if he would make a Shehchiyanu or not. And he said, hold on 1 minute. I want to make a Shehchiyanu, and I bought a new gartel specially for the occasion. So he went into his house. I'm standing outside with the book. He got a gartel. I mean, it was okay, it was a fancy gartel. He's a Rebbe guy, but he takes the gartel. He makes a Shehchiyanu of the gartel, and he has come out on the sefer. So hello, the gartel took you 15 minutes to write, and maybe 50 shekel. This is $15,000 you spent, and you have something which is to make a Shehchiyanu, make a Toiva Meita, make something. So that's what he did. So. Okay, so there's a Ma'aser Rav, Ma'aser Shahaya, but nevertheless, it doesn't stop us from trying to understand when do we make a Shehchiyanu, when do we not make a Shehchiyanu? Maybe he held it was a mitzvah. Mitzvahs Lav Lehenas didn't know. I asked him, he didn't even answer me. He said, he says he's Yotze with the gartel.
If he did it without the gartel, maybe his thinking was that there are a lot of things that in our lives where there's a strong hisragshus. You can't. There's no end to it. There's no bull. You could go around making shechayim all the time. But there's something concrete in Shulchan Aruch that says Kein Chadashim. So that's more limited. It's more defined.
But what about if I'm handing him a sefer, and he's seeing it for the first time, and it's his?
And a chanami.
Yeah,
but it's on the hisragshus.
I agree with you.
That was his concern.
No, Yitzhak is a very good point. You need an event to isolate and define the hisragshus hadavar. So the etzem is you're making a bracha on the hisragshus of simcha, but you only make it if there's like a particular thing that's going on. But with so many exclusions that it leaves me in the dust over here as to when you make a shechina and when you don't. So I pointed out that there's three main Rishonim. There's the Ran, Tosfos, and the Rambam. If you look at the sheet, you'll see. So the Ran holds, this is all Mefurish, that's in Sukkah Chaf Beis. The Ran, where he talks about where the Gemara talks about making a bracha on a lulav and a mitzvah ba mizman luzman. So the Ran says, Mevarchen rak al mitzvahs atzluyos bizman. You can't just go around making shechiyanus on a mitzvah, but only if it's a mitzvah, like for instance, tefillin is a mitzvah you do every day, but rather on a mitzvah that comes at a certain time, just like a mitzvah sasesha, zman grama, you can't shake a lulav the day before Sukkos. L'chein, and therefore says the Ran Mefurish, ein levarach al tefillin chadasha shechiyanu. Mefurish. It's because what? Because it's not ba mizman. Tosfos, who I'm not going to pay so much attention to today, because the ones that are brought to Halachah is the Ran and the Rambam. But Tosfos says, I just wrote it for you, that this is his lashon in Sukkah Memvav. Rak al mitzvah sheyeshi mas simcha kigoin Sukkah v'lulav. He says also you don't make a bracha on tefillin, lo yal tzitzis tefillin chadashim, but not because it's a different reason, not because it's not totally bisman, but because there's no simcha. What's a simcha? You're putting on tefillin for this first time. It's not the type of course there's a simcha, but it's not the type of a simcha that you make a bracha shechiyanu on. So the Ran and Tosfos are saying the same thing. You don't make a bracha on putting on tefillin for the first time, but they're saying it seemingly for two different reasons, either because it's not ba mizman l'zman, or because it doesn't have simcha. But it could be, I'm just positing here, that really Tosfos and the Ran are saying the same thing. And he's saying that when does a mitzvah give you simcha? When like Yitzchak says, there's an occasion. And the occasion is some occasion. The word occasion, definition of the word is that it's something that comes mizman l'zman. That's what it means to have an occasion. So therefore, it could be Tosfos saying the same thing as the Ran, that there's no simcha on it. Why? Look at the Ran, because it's not ba mizman l'zman. It's not totally bisman. So Yecholiot, the Tosfos and the Ran are saying pretty much the same thing, which is why the Ran is brought Halachah and not Tosfos. Comes the Rambam all the way onto the left of the sheet here, and the Rambam says, "Let me be masader this for you. I'm going to organize the halacha." And he says that if you can fulfill mevarchin be'echad mishloisha tnayim habayim, says the lashon of the Rambam, you can make a bracha shechiyanu if you fulfill any one of the following three conditions. First of all, like the Ran says, if it's a mitzvah ba mizman lizman, right? Women make a Shehchiyanu by Hadlakas Neris of Yantiv, but not Shabbos because it's Tadir, but Yantiv, yes, or Kiddush. We make a Shehchiyanu Kiddush. Second way to make a Shehchiyanu, you need all three. You need one of the three. Mitzvah she'ena tadira kegoin milo pidyon ben. So that's interesting because we're walking around with a milo all the time. So it's not ba mizman lizman. But being that it's a you only get to do a milah maybe once, or if you have children a few times in your life, so that's called the mitzvah she'ena tadira k'goyin milah pidyon ben, and then you make a shehchiyanu on that mitzvah. Now, it could be that beis is saying also why if it's b'al mizman lizman we understand the occasion, but what's milah? The answer is that it's the same thing as b'al mizman lizman, even though it's not b'al mizman lizman, because it gives you this equal amount of simcha. The common denominator between the first thing in the Rambam and the second thing in the Rambam, these are both ways of getting simcha.
Isn't category bet simply a subset of category aleph? What's the difference?
That's what I'm saying. I don't know. No, because mitzvah ba mizman lizman is as opposed to milah.
Ba mizman lizman means it repeats itself on a occasionally.
Occasionally, like once, like Sugyos.
Mm-hmm.
By milah is you make a bracha al ha-milah once, so it's a one-time maisa. Maybe you're not the kid is normal for the rest of his life, but there is a one-time maisa.
Therefore,
it's not.
Therefore, what?
Therefore, it's not something that's tadir.
Well, he calls it tadir. He calls it mefurish tadir because you're the etzim, like, let's say the kid grows up, so he's chayiv in the meal on himself, right? So he's saying it's tadir. You're right. I mean, but he's saying it's tadir.
There's one chalos.
Yeah, but you're making a bracha on the chalos. So, but you're right, because that's exactly what the Rambam is saying, Lanias Daiti, that since there's an occasion here of doing a bris milah, and you did the mice of the bris milah, then there's no difference between beis and aleph. It's exactly what he's saying. Therefore, it's the same thing as a mitzvah ba mizman lizman. What's the difference if it comes once a year, once a lifetime? It's ba mizman lizman. But then the Rambam says a third thing, which is very important for our sugya here, and he says, "Kol mitzvah she kinyan loy, you're going tzitzis utfilan chadosh." Direct hit on the Ran. The Ran says, and Toras says for that matter, loy al tzitzis utfilan chadoshim, and the Rambam says, yes, al tzitzis utfilan chadoshim. We have a machlokes berura between the Rambam and between Toras, between the Ran, whether you make a bracha on tzitzis, but I'm not, or tzitzis or tefillah. But what I want to say is, like, deeper than that. Yes, it's a machlokes, but what is the machlokes? So because tzitzis and tefillin are not for sure aleph and beis or something that's ba mizman lizman, but you put on tefillin, it's not ba mizman lizman. That's for sure tadira, right? It's not like you're saying you do the ma'aseh milah only once. You do it every day. Some people all day. So therefore, it says the Ran, no, you can't make a shehchiyanu on when you put on tefillin the first time. The Rambam says before you do. So now, right? Everybody with me? The three Rishonim: Ran, Tosos, the Rambam.
You mentioned Shlomo Zalman Auerbach gave the tefillin to his son.
I'm gonna get there. It's right there on the list. He's on the bottom. But let's look at it. The Rambam. Let's look at the left side of the page here. The Gra in Siman Chav Beis, that's Hilchos Tzitzis. Anyway, the Gra says Mefurish Bir Halacha Bir Agra Sivkot Aleph Halacha Ka Rambam. Meaning, we're going to see what that means, but we'll get back to that in a second. But he says we paskin like the Rambam, which would mean that we do make, according to the Gra, we do make a bracha of Shehchiyanu on when we put on tefillin the first time. Correct? You do. even if you get, I mean, you would think even if you get new tefillin chadash, it's not even the first time I'm saying it wrong. Like you stop, you get a new pair of tefillin, beautiful. You know, you just dumped $1,000 on a pair of tefillin. You have a pair of tefillin chadash. It's like getting a new suit. Lashon Rambaz komitzu she kinyan, like you're going tzitzis with tefillin chadashos. So the Gra in his Biur Gra, which is typically like one line, he brings a raya to the Rambam from the Tosefta. He says it's mefurish in Chazal, meaning like it's not left. If it's mefurish in Chazal, then we shouldn't be mefalpil this far, that's far. It's mefurish in Chazal. He brings a Tosefta that you make a bracha on new tefillin. The Ramah, I'm just going down the left side here. The Ramah, this is a Ramah in Yordei Chavches, not in Hilchos Tzitzis, not in Hilchos Tefillin, in Yordei Chavches. And the Ramah says mefurish, Hamachas Adam b'pam harishona, you're a shoichet, and the first time you do kisui Adam.
In your life?
I guess. Hamachas Adam b'pam harishona, you get to do that mitzvah. Mivarach Shehchiyanu. The Berhetiv there says, like, was he waiting all the way till the Kisui Adam is when you shech the chicken. There's no Kisui Adam on an animal. So you shech the chicken, you do Kisui Adam, you do shchita, and then you take the blood and you bury it. You cover it with a kli. That's what you do, Adayom Hazeh. So the first time you get to do that mitzvah, you make a Shehchiyanu. I don't know why Dafka that mitzvah he picks, but that's where he says it, the Ramah. And the Berhetiv asks, well, what is he waiting all the way for the Kisui Adam? Why doesn't he make it the first time he does Shchita? You do Shchita, make a Shehchiyanu. Why Kisui Adam? So the Berhetiv says, interestingly, that when you kill an animal, you don't make a Shehchiyanu. You don't make a Shehchiyanu. There are those that say that you don't make a Shehchiyanu on a bris milah because you're hurting the kid. Tzara dinuka. So it's something to consider here.
Maybe the difference between the shchita and the kisui adam is that the shchita is a matir, whereas
therefore,
when you want to eat meat, then you have to shecht it, then you have to shecht it in the way that the Torah describes. The kisui adam is
also a matter.
Yeah.
Let me just finish my numbers here. The Taz, not in Chaf Beis where we were before, but a different Taz, he brings this Ramah in Yordea. So here's our lineup to the left, on the left side of our ring. We have the Rambam, which is brought by Halachah, by the Gra, by the Ramah, which is generally our posek, and by the Taz. These are all the Poskei Hador. So according to this lineup on the left, you should make a Shehchiyanu when you get a new pair of tefillin. Yes? If you move over to the Ran side, the other side of the ring, so the Ran says, the Shach, there, where the Ramah says, it's the same place where the Ramah says you make a bracha on Kisui Adam. So the Shach says, there's a Taz and a Shach, right? So where the Taz says, the Ramah says you make a bracha, comes the Shach and he argues with the Ramah. And he says, no way. Ein mevarchin al kisui Adam ki halacha keharan. So you have here machlokes the Shach, and if you remember the Taz that says like the halacha is like the Ramah. So it comes out very interesting that the Ramah paskins like the Rambam. Yeah. And the Shach says, no, the halacha is like the Ran. Ein mevarchin, says the Shach further. Ein mevarchin al hanisuyim mishum she'eina tzluya bizman. Now that we know that we paskin like the Ran, says the Shach, and it has to be like he said, like I have right above there, it has to be tzluya bizman. So the same reason we don't make a bracha on when you get married, because it's not tluya b'zman. You can get married on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It's not tluya b'zman. You get married when you're 18, when you're 19, when you're 20. It doesn't make any difference. So
tluya b'zman means like set in the calendar. If you look at a calendar, know when I do it versus
well, yeah, a red letter date in the calendar is where you make a Shehchiyanu. So it's interesting. Let me just propose here that the Sfardim are more careful about making a Shehchiyanu under the chuppah. which we'll talk about in a minute. But the Sfardim are always going with the Rambam, yeah? So since the Rambam says that it's, Ein Mevarach al Kisei ki halacha ka'aran, but if you hold like the Rambam, then it's not, it is a mitzvah sheina tadira, kagoin milo pidyon haben. It does qualify for base. So maybe that's why the Sfardim are more makbid, although it's not a direct hit either. So now halacha l'maisa is the Shulchan Aruch, and this is what we talked about last time. And Shulchan Aruch, I'm just going to open the sefer here. Shulchan Aruch is in Chelik Aleph Siman Chaf Beis, one sif uboy sif echad, and it's a perplexing Shulchan Aruch because the Shulchan Aruch says. By the way, as I pointed out last time, the Shulchan Aruch usually paskins like the Rambam. And I think if you read it quickly, you think he is paskening like the Rambam. But he's not paskening like the Rambam, he's paskening like the Ram. Because he says, Kana talis v'asa by tzitzis mevarach Shehchiyanu. There you go, Rambam, right? Says that then he adds, D'laigara mikelim chadoshim, because what's it worse than if you bought a new suit? You bought a new car. So you bought new tefillin. You bought new tzitzis.
It's just the Kenyan aspect.
Right.
Not
So
the
why
mitzvah
does
aspect.
why does he have to add in this piece? Totally unnecessary to add in this piece to say that because it's not worse than a kelim chadashim. Say because it's a new mitzvah and we hold like the Rambam. Don't be ashamed. So mashma clearly that the Shulchan Aruch is paskening like the Ram. It seems to be a davar pashut in the Shulchan Aruch. Although I looked at a lot of the modern mefarshim of the Shulchan Aruch, and they say Ka Rambam, but it's a mistake, not Ka Rambam. And now the Ramah, I don't think I put this on here, but I will tell you now. The Ramah adds on to the Shulchan Aruch seemingly insignificantly. Now, don't forget the Ramah does paskin like the Rambam by Kisui Adam. Yes, you following me? The Ramah does paskin. So what should the Ramah say? That you don't need this aspect of Kinyan, correct?
Right.
The Ramah should say. So the Ramah says, "V'im loy beirach b'shas asiyah." If you didn't make b'shas a bracha b'shas asiyah when you make the tzitzis, mevarach b'shas ituf risha, and you make the bracha when you first put it on. So what's wrong with this Ramah? I mean, what's the Ramah adding over here? Where do we? They both say kana talis v'asa by tzitzis. They're both talking about you took a talis, you made new tzitzis in it. The Shulchan Aruch says you make a Shehchiyanu d'laigara mikelim chadashim, and the Ramah says, but you could also put it on. You could also make a Shehchiyanu on the ituf rishon the first time you put it on. So it's the Ramah l'shitas should simply say that you make a bracha on it. You don't, not because laigara. I don't know if he has to say anything, but not because laigara mikelim chadashim, because that's what you do. Because we paskin like the Rambam, as the Ramah does by Kisui Adam.
Right. Rav Haber, regarding the Ramah, when he gives when he mentions Kisui Hadam, is he using that just as an example? In other words, he would also say that if I am ever zocha to be kind of mitzvahs pidyon peter chamor, I should also make a Shehchiyanu then?
Yeah. In the Taz, he says mefurish. If you look at the Taz, you see where the Taz is on the left side of the page?
Yeah.
So here, I forgot that I said the Ramah. The Taz in not in Simon Chav Beis, in Simon Chav Gimel, which is Dinei Tzitzis Bebeis HaKvaros, by the way. He says, Das HaShulchan Aruch Tzitzis V'hu Adin Tefillin. You see, because the big question here, let me just speak this out for a second, that why did the Shulchan Aruch say Kana talis v'asa by tzitzis mevarach Shehchiyanu? Why doesn't he say that in Hilchos Tefillin also? So
because normally a person doesn't make his own tefillin.
Okay. So okay. But whatever.
The person doesn't make his own suit either.
That's right. Like, why do you have to make your own tefillin? But from this, if you look, I'm sorry to jump you around the page here, but it's easier in no page. If you look all the way to the right at the Aruch HaShulchan, he's medayik in the Shulchan Aruch. He says, Lama b'tzitzis v'loy b'tefillin. Why does he say this halachah and hilchos tzitzis, and he doesn't say this halachah and hilchos tefillin? So the answer is, a Shulchan Aruch like our Rambam. the Aruch HaShulchan says, from here you see, you don't need any further proof that the Shulchan Aruch has walked away from the Rambam. He's holding like the Ran, because otherwise he would say the same thing, tzitzis and tefillin.
As far as the Ramah, waiting till Ituf, buy a new fruit. We can make it on Re'iyah, but it's a mila to wait till we eat it.
Yeah. Okay. Don't jump ahead. It's not helping. Okay. Let me just.
So that's the same mila by Ituf.
Okay. Let's get the. It's already confusing. So what we have here is a clear machlokes, Rambam and the Ran, and the Gra clearly, the Gra, the Ramah, and the Taz, all clearly paskin like this Rambam. And on the other hand, the Shach argues with the Taz, and you have it all here. The Shulchan Aruch himself argues with the Rambam and goes with the Ran, and the Aruch HaShulchan, the whole Siman Chav Beis, which is only 2 paragraphs. The Aruch HaShulchan also says that the Aruch HaShulchan says that the Shulchan Aruch holds like the Ran. So we have basically a machlokes, Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah. And I don't know why the Ramah is being so meek over here in Siman Chav Beis. Why didn't he just, no, what are you talking about? The Halachah is Karamba. But we have a clear machlokes, the Mechaber in Orach Chaim to the Ramah in Yerodea. You have a clear machlokes, the Shach in Hilchos Tzitzis, and I'm sorry, the Shach in Yerodea, and the Taz and over here in Orach Chaim, who says Mefurish, the Taz in Hilchos Tzitzis brings the Ramah in Yerodea. So you have machlokes Shach and Taz, machlokes Shulchan Aruch and Ramah, machlokes Ran and Tosfos, and that's your lineup. Comes the Mishnah Berurah. This is where I left you last time. So I hope, is this all clear? If it's not clear, tell me. Okay, it's clear.
Isn't there a difference between tzitzis and tefillin?
What's the difference? Yeah, I want to hear.
One's a beged, which is a kli, and tefillin isn't really. It's a well, actually, I don't know how you describe it, but it's not the same in the same category as a beged. So there should be a distinction there, shouldn't there?
It's a chefza shel mitzvah. A talus is not.
Mm-hmm. I mean, why not? You don't take it into the bathroom.
Yeah, but you're basically, it's be'etzim a beged. The mitzvah is if you have a 4-cornered beged, you put tzitzis on it, but its fundamental definition is a beged.
Okay. Which would explain, if that's true, it would explain why the Shulchan Aruch doesn't bring tefillin, because he holds like the Ran. And he also holds that a beged chadash. In other words, so according to the Shulchan Aruch, there's basically, let me just say this, according to the Shulchan Aruch, there's 2 times you make a Shehchiyanu, Shulchan Aruch and the Ran. One is, of course, when you buy a new beged. And that's why tzitzis is like a new beged, like you're saying, Phil. Tzitzis is like a new beged, so of course you make a Shehchiyanu. Why am I putting this in Hilchos Tzitzis? Because right now we're telling you how to make tzitzis. That's all. So the 2 times that you're going to make a Shehchiyanu is, of course, when you get a new beged and when you do a mitzvah haba mizman lizman. And the Shulchan Aruch does not say you should make a bracha on kisui adam, for instance, or any other mitzvah. So to come out, tell me if I'm right, Reb Phil, that this is really just about the only case that you'll make a Shehchiyanu on a mitzvah according to the Shulchan Aruch. I mean, unless it's like Sugyos or Lulav or something. But the only case on a mitzvah tamidi, the mitzvah tadira, according to the Shulchan Aruch, that you're going to make a Shehchiyanu is on a talus, because that's the only thing that's something like a beged. A Lulav is not like a beged. Right? So it's very interesting. The Shulchan Aruch, you're never going to make a Shehchiyanu on mitzvahs, which would certainly explain why we don't make a Shehchiyanu under the chuppah. And the only case, that's the chiddush of the Shulchan Aruch here, the only case you're ever going to make, according to the Shulchan Aruch, is a Shehchiyanu on a mitzvah tadira is dafka talus. That's the only case that I could think of.
Because of the Kenyan aspect of it?
Because that's like a beged chadash. It is a beged chadash. Maybe when a kohen puts on his shmona begadim the first time. That might be another case, but where he gets, whoa, thank you, mom. Gewaldige new mitzvah, you know.
If you bought a beautiful talus and you didn't put tzitzis on it yet,
No, so
theoretically, could you make the Shehchiyanu before
No,
the
no,
tzitzis?
because it's not a usable beged. But also, by the way, if you buy a suit and it needs to get tailored, you don't make a Shehchiyanu until you put it on, right? So same thing, the tzitzis is like the tailoring of the beged.
So according to the Shulchan Aruch, if the Kenyan aspect is enough to justify the bracha, why don't I make a bracha when I buy or put on tefillin? That costs 1,000 times more than a tzitzis.
So you said a difference, somebody here said a difference between tefillin and a talus, and it's not about the cost. It's about one is a levisha, one is a beged, and one is not a beged. Yeah, it's a beged. I think the Gemara in Yevamos says that tzitzis has to be yotze, it has to be a ksus, like it has to be a ksus. Ksus is lashon kisa, like you cover yourself with it. You have to have enough from it. You have to have enough from it.
Can we remove the union of chuppah from the equation by saying chuppah has its own bracha? You know, Shehchiyanu es.
So does Yontiv. So does Yontiv has a kiddush.
Right. We said the last year that the Shehchiyanu on Yom Tov is different. Is not like the same Shehchiyanu mitzvahs.
Okay, lulav has, you say on the tilas lulav, Shehchiyanu. So I don't know anywhere that it says that if you make one bracha and you should make another bracha. The only place I ever heard such a thing is that if you're making, sometimes you make a Shehchiyanu, sometimes you make a tova meitiv. So once you make a tova meitiv, you don't usually make a Shehchiyanu. Like the tova meitiv is called the Shehchiyanu. But let me just, well, before I get the sheet off the screen, the Mishnah Berurah in Sivkot and Beis, if you have a Mishnah Berurah, because it's better oisios machimos inside. So the Mishnah Berurah says, "Aval ein mevarech." Listen, Yitzchak, ein mevarech Shehchiyanu ala mitzvah. When with the Mishnah Berurah is mevarech Shulchan Aruch above. The Shulchan Aruch says you make a bracha on tzitzis, but ein mevarech Shehchiyanu ala mitzvah, not because of the mitzvah of tzitzis. He speaks it out mefurish. Kiven de einoi ba mizman lezman. Right? There's Mishnah Berurah in front of me. For instance, if I'm reading from the Mishnah Berurah, if you just add, you took your tzitzis were out, so you're putting new tzitzis in your beged, or you had an old beged around. I'm going to put tzitzis in this. Why? Because that would be making a Shehchiyanu on the mitzvah, and no. You don't make a bracha on the mitzvah. This is very clear to Mishnah Berurah, according to the Shulchan Aruch. So we have a clear thing in the Mishnah Berurah here that he says, like the Shulchan Aruch, who says, like the Ran, not like the Rambam, that we don't make brachas on mitzvahs, period. We don't make brachas on mitzvahs chadashos unless it's a mitzvah sheba mizman lizman. Now, if you take a look on the side, the Be'er Halachah says to us, da. I'm going to skip down, and if you have the Mishnah Berurah open, I'm going down, 4 lines down. Mikol Makayim, says the Be'er Halachah, and he throws a wrench into this thing. Very beautiful. We had a beautiful symmetry. The Ran, the Shulchan Aruch, against the Ramah, by the way, which is interesting why our minhag is like that. But the Ran, the Shulchan Aruch, the Mishnah Berurah, we have it all clear. Then he says here, Mikol Makom Lav Milsa de Psiktahu. This is not so pashut. Even though the Shulchan Aruch says this, and I said in the Mishnah Berurah that you'll never make a bracha on old tzitzis, new tzitzis, right? An old beged, new tzitzis. He said, not so pashut. Lav milsa psikta hill. It's not a davar psikta. He means that everybody agrees. Why? Da oilus tamid v'hataz Pasko kaharambam, v'hagra b'veyorav poisav gam ken kaharambam. Like the Mishmeres is asking on himself, why am I going against the Gra? Who paskins like the Rambam? And if the Gra paskins like the Rambam, why am I going like the Ran? Well, the answer is very simple because he's going with the Shulchan Aruch, but he's asking this on himself. The Tzar, according to the Rambam, says the Ber Halacha, the Tzarich levarech Shehchiyanu gam al tefillin michadash. You do have to make a bracha on tefillin michadash. And I'm skipping the parentheses here in the Ber Halacha if you have it there. Al kain me'anochain. So the Mishnah says we have a dilemma because according to the Shulchan Aruch, you're not going to make a bracha on new tefillin. But according to the Gra, if you're a Granik, you will make a bracha on new tefillin. I'm convinced of that. I'd love to know what the Talmidei Gra do. Do they make? I don't know. I just don't know the answer to that. But what the Mishnah Berurah says to do, which is sort of typical Mishnah Berurah, is play it safe. What's the play it safe? Al kain me hanochain sheyachnis atzmai li'ischayev Shehchiyanu mitzad acher. Figure out a different way to make a Shehchiyanu.
Rav Asher Weiss.
Figure out, get your gartel out, and figure out a different way to make a Shehchiyanu. V'yichavin liftar gam hazeh. Befratim hu loivesh ata tefillin pam rishayna b'mechayev. This is the first time the kid is wearing tefillin. B'vada yira lasis eitzazu. So here I am with the kid. I don't tell him to make a Shehchiyanu. I tell him, make sure you're wearing a new suit. So it's a little bit counterintuitive, but the Mishmeres is saying, listen, I can't go against the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch says like the Ran, we pass like the Ram, but I do have to worry about the Taz and the Gra and the Rambam. So the Eitzah is the play it safe way to do this is always to make sure that you have a something else to make a Shehchiyanu on and be mitzi this. And this is I'm sure what Rabbi Asher Weiss based his halacha on.
What about what's in the parentheses that he makes it fill himself?
So I didn't want to confuse things. What happened? So you're very good, Menachem. You brought it up. I can't ignore you. So the parenthesis says here, when the Gra will only hold. I skipped it because I don't understand it, to be honest. The Gra will only hold that if you make the tefillin yourself, you make a Shehchiyanu. Cholzeh. It's the Gra. Like every one of us does. I'm sorry. Okay, so by the way, the Mishnah Berurah is medayik in the Gra that you have to make the tefillin or you have to make the tzitzis, otherwise you don't make a Shehchiyanu. But I just want to tell you, the Ramah says not like that. And the Taz says not like that. So it's not at all a davar pashut, but that's how the Mishnah Berurah is medayik in the Gra. So tachlis, what should we do? I go back to the Eitzah of the Ber Halacha. That look, I paskin like the Shulchan Aruch and the Ran. Well, those are the Shulchan Aruch, but la halacha, you should try to have an Eitzah. You know, I had this. I was visualizing this shir before I gave it a few minutes ago, and I just had this vision of me being Masader Kiddushin, and then the Kala pulling out of her pocket a star fruit in order to make a Shehchiyanu. So, you know,
Ma'aseh b'chol shana.
Right. No, I meaning like I'm taking it to an extreme to bring out the seeming absurdity of the situation, that to make a bracha on a star fruit like we all do on second day Rosh Hashanah, instead of on this $100,000 affair, you know, and $1,000 ksuva and $1,000 wedding gown, you know, pull out the star fruit, like, you know,
Make it on the wedding gown or on the custom suit.
l'chayra, yeah, I mean, make it around the ring. But here we're saying nobody does this. But you know, like I'm thinking, you know, I'm a creative guy. I was thinking, like, when I'm a Sadar Kedushin, like they get, you know, there's always a little plate there with the wine and the cup and the whole business, you know, and the ring and the ksuva, you know, like put a star fruit on there, and let's get a Shehchiyanu going over here, because it's disturbing to me that there's no Shehchiyanu at a chasana because ein lecha simcha gadol mizu. I just, there was a Talmud Chacham, Rav Davidovich. He was in shul yesterday. He came to bring me a new sefer that he wrote. He's the head of the Dushinsky Shiva Dushinsky, friend of mine, very hush of a person. So I said to him, why don't we make a Shehchiyanu under a chuppah? Just give me a quick answer. I mean, I know the sugya. He wasn't in the sugya. So he says, you don't know if it's going to end up good. So that's like a real Yerushalmi way of looking at it. Yeah, like
it's good to have a Shehchiyanu food also, though. Right?
Well, the fruit is good.
People make all these Shehchiyanu foods and they try it and they're like, that would
yeah.
you.
Okay, I mean, as far was the Shehchiyanu, the star fruit is definitely sweet.
Right.
I'm guessing what he meant. I mean, I don't know if he's joking or serious or both. Like a Talmud Chacham is, Torah and jokes, but I imagine it's something like that there's definitely like marriage is a big
matzah.
No, there's no bigger simcha than a chasana, but at the same time, it's always challenging and it's always a struggle and ein l'chatzar k'mo k'tzar gidul banim. And we walk into it and with tremendous simcha but it's the Shehchiyanu maybe has to be you're nervous. Let's say that you're nervous. The Shehchiyanu has to be a pure moment of simcha.
Maybe Tosis Svara could help us. He's differentiating between certainly you have your brand new tefillin, it's a simcha, but he's saying it's not the same. It's not a simcha in the same way that sukkah and lulav are simcha. So basically, the Torah is koveh as a simcha. It's not like my subjective experience of simcha,
right, which is, by the way, what you said before. In other words, like we can walk around beregesh and besimcha all day. Halavai.
Mm-hmm.
You don't make a bracha every 5 minutes.
So by the chuppah,
what occasion does the Torah tell you have to make a Shehchiyanu on it? But I would, if ani akatan, without Shulchan Aruch, without anything, I say, well, obviously by a chasana. That would be the.
Well, that would be according to Tosfos like tefillin, subjective.
Yep. So fascinating halacha. Now, let's go for. I've already got a time. I'm always running out of time. I don't know what this is. I need some time management skills here. But let's just say over to Rav Shlomo Zalman again because it'll have new meaning for us. So the Rav Shlomo Zalman says this is in the Mincha Shleima. I looked it up. I just pulled out a sentence, but he says lo yakne. That's how you say that word. Lo yakne ha'av libnai es hatfilin. So here we go back to the kid who's putting on tefillin for the first time. I Baruch Hashem lately I've been doing this mitzvah a lot with kids. Putting on tefillin the first time, the father buys him a pair of tefillin. I often arrange it, 4,600 shekel. So the father buys his son a new pair of tefillin. Lo yakne ha'av libnayis tefillin. Don't give them to your son. By the way, Agav, do you know that the Minig Yerushalayim, the same Rav Davidovich told me, he's a real Yerushalmi, Doris Davidovich, and his grandfather was the famous Sefer Davidovich, by the way. So he told me that in the Minig Yerushalayim always was that you didn't buy a kid tefillin for his bar mitzvah. You bought him tefillin when he was 20 years old. You lent him your tefillin. Until he's old enough to take care of it. That's what he said, But I have another svar about tefillin, but I'll tell you in a minute. But here's Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, who did buy his children tefillin. He says, Lo yakne ha'av libnayis hatefillin. Don't give them to the kid. Elo b'yoim habar mitzvah. You see, the truth is, he's not really capable of a kinyan before his bar mitzvah anyway. But make a das makna and a das koina at the bar mitzvah day, boy b'yoim. V'az haben yachol levarich Shehchiyanu. Now he's not making a Shehchiyanu on the mitzvah of tefillin, which we're told we can't do according to the Ran. And he's going with the Shulchan Aruch and the Mishnah Berurah and the Ran. But you can make a bracha on getting an expensive gift, which is interesting because, in other words, if you buy tefillin But what he's saying here is if you go out and buy yourself a new pair of tefillin and spend 4,600 shekel, when you put them on, there's no Shehchiyanu. That's what the Ran says. But if I would give you those tefillin as a gift, so now you have if you bought it yourself, you took money and you did a mitzvah with it, mitzvah slav lahanas. But if I go and buy you the tefillin, dal mehachi, the inyan of the mitzvah of tefillin, you just got an expensive gift. Wow. So once you got an expensive gift, then now you can make a Shehchiyanu. Lashon Rav Shlomo Zalman, lo yakna of libnoyas hatefillin ala biyoyma bar mitzvah, va'oz haben yochel levarach Shehchiyanu, sharei nena me'etzam ha'rechush shekibel.
Nobody holds about a kala making brachas on her engagement ring.
Doesn't say.
I know, but it's the same idea, no?
Same idea.
Rechush gadol.
Rechush gadol.
When he said you can't make a bracha when you buy your own suit?
Of course you make a bracha. No, but when you buy a mitzvah, you can't make a bracha. Because mitzvahs are not there for your pleasure. So if you buy a suit, of course you make a bracha. Shehchiyanu. If you buy a car, you make a Shehchiyanu. If you buy a house, you make a Shehchiyanu. You buy tefillin not because the tefillin I did in the service of the Lord. I'm not doing this for myself. However, if I receive the tefillin as a gift, I'm not making on the tefillin, I'm making on the gift. Wow, I'm $1,000 richer. That's what Rav Shlomo Zalman says, which is extremely mechudash kedarkoi, because the Mishnah Berurah doesn't give the simple eitzah. Nobody gives the simple eitzah. That's why I said maybe because of Minig Yerushalayim, maybe the Minig HaKadosh was you don't buy tefillin for your son. Maybe that's something we made up. You know, this idea of buying expensive tefillin for your son. I also want to point out, just while I'm here, tefillin have largely evolved over the last century. I mean, I'm sure you realize this, but I don't know if you realize how much. Basically, we've gone 4 steps in tefillin. It's an evolving technology. In tefillin, we don't say, do it the old way. Very interesting, because tefillin, before they had any kind of technology to shape leather and make it hard the way our tefillin are, it looks like a piece of wood, not like a piece of leather. So everybody wore, even when I was a kid, people had pshutim. These pshutim were tefillin, not takas, pshutim. They were cheap, you know, $50, you buy a pair of tefillin, and you could literally, if you squeezed them hard enough, you would crush them. And that was really, so they really took like a very thin layer of leather that they were able to shape and make a rebuah, and they didn't last very long, and they weren't very good. And now those are the tefillin, you know, you can see them in the pictures of the Holocaust, Elena, Rahman al-Islam. These are the tefillin that they have, and a lot of times, if somebody inherited a pair of tefillin from your grandfather, they won't be pshutim. Why? Because they wouldn't have lasted so long to inherit them. Or they're puzzle. They're usually puzzle. Pshutim, pshutim, that's what I call it. Simple tefillin will not last, and they're not fixable. You can't sharpen the edges. You can't do anything. Most you can do is paint it. But the more expensive tefillin, even in the old days, were dakos. So dakos is when you made the leather thicker than pshutim. It wasn't like a piece of paper. It was, or a piece of cardboard. It was already dakos. It was a piece of leather. You couldn't squeeze it in your finger, but it was a very thin piece of leather. And those were the tefillin. That was the soup du jour in 1930, 1940. You bought tefillin dakos. And then
is that why the tefillin was smaller as well?
Also smaller, and but I could tell you that in the Rav Shulchan Aruch, the Balatanya had dakos, and he was very proud of it. Those are tefillin dakos. So you could still buy them, but don't. It's not the way to go. And you know, the Lubavitchers that put tefillin on a lot of people, every few months they have to get another pair of tefillin because they didn't last. They were dakos.
If it's
Then
dakos is thin, why is it stronger?
Because it's thicker than pshutim. It's stronger than pshutim. Then here in Yerushalayim, of all places, Nesanel HaSofer, I believe it was, famous, he invented gasos. So that means with big presses that he made hot, he was able to take a very thick, this is a Yerushalmi and Me'asharim, able to take very thick pieces of leather and mold them, and they would last a lifetime. So we went from pshutim Tedakos, Tegasos. This is all in parentheses, but I want you to know this. Let me see something. Now, how do I get my screen back here?
You unshare your screen.
Okay. Are you impressed? The Nasano made gasos. Basically, every Rav in the world said, enough with the dakos, get gasos, spend the money. But there were hundreds of dollars instead of $50, $100, expensive process, and get gasos. Now the problem with gasos, and that's probably what most of everybody here has, is tefillin gasos. The problem with gasos is it's not an exact science. And what I mean by that is that if you'll notice on most of your tefillin, the tefillin, of course, are open. They put in the parshios, and that's why I wanted my screen to be able to do this with my hands. And then they close the bottom and sew together, yeah? So when they do that, when I say it's not an exact science, it's not done by laser cutters or anything like that. So they don't really come together properly. You've got gaps there where they're coming together. It's a little bit of a grub, excuse the expression, science. They don't come completely together. So what to do? They use fillers. Kosher filler is pieces of leather, min b'minoi, and they put it in there. And then they paint it over, you don't see it. But when your tefillin are 7, 8, 10 years old, you start seeing lines. That's what those lines are. Unkosher filler, which is scandalous, and they do it, is they stick wood glue in there and paint it over. So if you ever see on your tefillin, you should be very careful, not a strip of leather in the middle, that's kosher. But rather you see like little round things, which is glue, then your tefillin are not kosher. Just telling you. But that's evolution. So today, meaning the last say 6 years or 7 years, I think the science got better, and this is one of the few mitzvahs that evolved, right? The science got better, and now they have what's called miksha achas, which is the ones 4,600 shekel. So miksha achas is, by the way, I'm not in the tefillin business. I'm just as a miksha achas is such an exact science. It's so meduyak. Whatever they use, lasers, laser cutters, I don't know what they do, but whatever they do, when it closes, it's a perfect close. It's a perfect close. Maybe they took the technology from some shoe company, I don't know, but it's a hard leather and it closes perfectly. There's no fillers at all. And this, the Shach says, the Taz and Orach Chaim says that this is a big milah. And by the way, this is a milah that they used to have with pshutim. So we've gone all full circle to be able to make gasos, and they're beautiful, beautiful tefillin. And even if you wouldn't paint it over, if you'd see them in the light brown, you would hardly see that line. That's how fine it is. So what's happening is that these tefillin, I'm just saying it wasn't. I mean, it's very possible. I don't want to say something too balabatish, but it's very possible that in the time of the Shulchan Aruch, he says tzitzis yes, tefillin no, because tefillin were not a great, they weren't a great asset to a person's portfolio. Tefillin, like somebody made you tefillin, it was not known to be dvarim yakarim. As a matter of fact, I'll prove this to you, by the way. As a matter of fact, the Mishnah Berurah says a little bit earlier that you're allowed to borrow somebody's talus or tefillin without their permission, because mitzvah nichaleil adam la'avid mitzvah b'mayneh, right? You can assume the person is allowed to is happy for you to borrow his tzitzis or tefillin. That's what the Mishnah Berurah says. The poskim on the Mishnah Berurah say not nowadays. Now tefillin are too expensive. You can borrow their tefillin, their tzitzis, but you can't borrow somebody's tefillin without rishus. So it's a chayvetz chashuv. Mashma, the time of Mishnah Berurah wasn't a chayvetz chashuv. So therefore, in terms of beged chadash, like let's say you buy a polo shirt, you don't make a Shehchiyanu, lahavdil elef havdalas. The only thing you have in the tefillin is the mitzvah of it. So you don't make a Shehchiyanu l'fi aran. But on tzitzis, you have the aspect of beged. So I still have more to say, but I'm going to try to end. I'm going to end on time. But the summary of the thing is that halacha l'maisa, we don't make a Shehchiyanu on any new mitzvah unless it's ba mizman lizman. The first time you do a mitzvah, if you go outside and you do shiluach haken or whatever mitzvah you're going to do, you don't make bracha because for some reason, which is, by the way, keneged aramah, which says you make a bracha on kisui adam, and the Taz says v'hu adin tefillin chadashim. But I'm saying if you're a Mishnah Berurah Yid, you don't make a bracha on that. But what you should do, says the Bir Halacha, is you should always have some other way to make a Shehchiyanu. So the ideal thing would be, to me, is, according to the Mishnah Berurah, is have the bar mitzvah kid get the tefillin and a new suit. And then he's making a bracha on, and you tell him, get a new suit, make the bracha on the suit, on the tefillin, al kol mitzvahs hayoim, as we say by the Megillah, which is ba mizman l'zman.
And the bar mitzvah should only get it on his bar mitzvah day, not early. In other words, the kinyan should take place when he's a gadol.
So that's I think that the reason Rav Shlomo Zalman says that is because there's not shaykh really a kinyan. So if you want to make a proper kinyan that he has rechush, so then it has to be. But if you then it has to be on the bar mitzvah day. However, if he's making that would be true of a suit also, right? So it could be that I'm just conjecturing here. There could be that the inyan of the Shehchiyanu is that the kid should wear his new thing boy b'yom. Like when you get the hat, you should wear it boy b'yom and make a Shehchiyanu. He gets a suit boy b'yom Shehchiyanu, and we might see the tefillin also. Maybe he should put on the suit for the first wearing of his tefillin. This is a beautiful thing for us to do. By the first wearing of his tefillin on his bar mitzvah, get him a new hat, or whatever kli chashuv, and let him make a Shehchiyanu at that point. That would be a good halacha to keep. Okay, I wish you all well and a good Kibbutz Shvach.
Rav Haber?
Yeah.
You can have a good day.
Rav Haber?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for making the time and effort to make that chart. It really was fantastic.
Thank you. Keep it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't usually do that. But I have to admit to you something, Pinchas. The reason I made it is not to help you from being confused, because I was confused. That's all. It was to help me sort it all out.
It's very good, though.
We should be so many charts together.
Haber,
a question on Shehchiyanu to Bris. A friend of mine had triplet boys a couple of weeks ago. Assuming all boys have their bris on the same day,
Very good.
make Shehchiyanu on each one or for the whole?
He keeps a star fruit in his pocket.
But that would only work then for one of the boys. For the next one, what about the third?
Look, the Minig Yerushalayim is that the Minig Eretz Yisrael is you make a Shehchiyanu to Bris, so it became part of the nusach of the bracha. So the minig, I believe the minig is like the Rambam, that each one is a bazundra simcha, and therefore you would make a Shehchiyanu on each one of them.
Right.
I believe so. Unless you make, there could be a matzav where you're doing bris achar bris, where you make one bracha ala milah, and the moil does each one, but you don't do that because you have a big hefsek in between. Hopefully, it's not like a conveyor belt.
Keep the other baby in the other room, so it's like he's not there.
Right,
So
right, but I'm saying, let's say, like boom, 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 like Harvin Pesach in Mitzrayim. That must have been like a bris factory before they brought the Carbon Pesach, because the way I understand it, so Moshe and Aaron and the people that he trained did a couple of million brisim that day, because everybody, the Rambam says, was Nisrashal and bris except for Shevet Levi. So himol yimol. So there must have been like such a lineup of brisim in one day. There must have been like a million brisim done. Okay, Hatzlach HaRav.
So one more question.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So it was I was brought up never to make a Shehchiyanu on shoes, leather shoes, because it didn't make a Shehchiyanu.
Don't make, yeah. The
Because it's
minig,
leather.
the minig is not to make a Shehchiyanu on shoes.
Because it's leather.
So there's also, by the way, a minig not to make Shehchiyanu on tachshitim because of the egel azav, I think. But something to do with the egel azav. But shoes,
leather
shoes
shoes.
either api kabbalah because it's a nal and it's leather, and like Hashem's that's lacking in kedusha, it represents klipas, or because it's something you're doiris on, which is what the Piskei Tshuva says.
I thought it was also more to also do with actually leather being from an animal, which you've had to.
What if you buy what if you get a new motorcycle and you get a new leather coat?
The leather coat would be also a problem, I would have thought.
The hat is also from a beaver, isn't it?
Strangle.
Mink stole a fur coat.
Yeah.
First, make animal things. Look, it's only new that we have so many synthetic materials. Huh? No, but I think Al Pi Kabbalah don't make a Shehchiyanu on shoes. I think that's the. Okay, gotta go. Zai, good.
Okay, thank you very much.